What's for pudding? Disturbing developments in embryo research.
Let's just have a look at this, right? Normal-looking crab, pregnant with a human fetus.
What is the point of doing that? What is the argument for it?
I don't know. It's to do with in vitro fertilization or how you can cultivate fetuses outside the womb because a crab has a certain circulatory system that can feed it.
Yeah, but the other thing is so much of the improvements in modern society being brought about by experiments on animals. The health is so much better. That is outrageous. Right. Of course it is. No, indefensible.
I mean, we're saying, right or wrong for that?
No, wrong for that.
When we actually asked the scientist who was responsible for that, I mean, I said, why are you doing that? And his reaction was pretty much kind of, and what do you do when somebody does that?
I know.
I mean, and that's the way people are.
I know.
Hello, I'm Tanya Breyer. This time, I'm afraid, with some unpleasant truths. Look at the sky. Doesn't look like it's full of problems, does it? But I've worked in weather, and I know that it is. I'm not talking about ozone here. I'm talking about clouds, because cloud damage is dramatically on the increase. Due to industrial ultraviolet carbons, true clouds are being replaced by mutant clouds, like Cirrus Sirius, Nimbus, and Altosyphilis. More and more, these are turning upside down and injecting their rain upwards into space. Needless to say, a Nigerian farmer can't exactly go up there and get it back, can he? Tragically, if the water does fall downwards, it can turn into triple water, which separates it into gases as it lands, blasting trees out of the ground and killing monkeys. Perhaps the most disturbing effect is the disruption of rivers. This is footage of the river Euphrates flowing backwards. It looks like it's flowing forwards, but only because we've reversed the film. Heavy water deeply confuses river flow systems. Just last month, 2 rivers got completely lost and were found wandering uselessly about the southern oceans. Sadly, bad clouds equals bad science.
So how far has the blight of bad science spread? According to the latest scandal, even as far as science classics like the Apollo moon landing. Alabaster Codify reports from across the big pond they call the Atlantic Ocean.
It's 1969 and the world watches 3 heroes alone in space. Or was it 4? Who is the yelper on this boosted sound tape? The 0836 whimper was originally explained as atmospheric retching, but shocking new evidence suggests the sound was made by this man, Peacecap Johnson, a sub-mental who died last week at the asylum where he lived for the last 27 years. It's claimed a box of letters found under his bed, many from Buzz Aldrin, prove that Johnson was the 4th man on 11. From these guys right now, it's no Apollo, but an ex-operative defied NASA to tell us que pasa.
Johnson, who was codenamed Sleeping Beauty, was a man of very low intelligence. He never really understood what was going on.
Johnson's job was to act as on-board sex receptacle.
Sleeping Beauty was trained to present his posterior to a hole in the locker whenever the crew members required relief.
Since the early days, distorted sex drive in orbit has been a sticky problem.
On board Gemini, John Young raped and ate alive 2 experimental monkeys.
Experiments with the rear end of horses failed. Women were deemed too silly for space. So what kind of man would agree to be the ass in NASA?
He had to be pretty much a 0-watt bulb. We stopped looking when we found him winning the stupidest boy in the Dane County Fair for a 3rd year running.
The 0836 whimper is Johnson's giant squeak for mankind at the hands of a frustrated Collins.
He took out his frustration on Johnson. And it's what psychiatrists would call a bully ramming.
By contrast, Aldrin used Johnson gently, and they forged a bond that saved Johnson's life.
Lose beauty, repeat, lose beauty.
When Houston required Johnson to be ejected into space, Aldrin refused.
11, the comparative beauty is lost. I repeat, Houston, can't do that.
Once down, Johnson was whisked to a shut-up-and-eat home, where his daffy moon talk seemed like any other booby babble.
I hope Buzz come back and clean my dirty. with his silkfish.
The astronauts are now in hiding and will only issue statements through an animal.
But Aldrin's letters make that testimony irrelevant. They abound with muted references to sex acts written in a plaintive tone that suggests a still-present yearning. This is Alabaster Codify for 10 and N and Brass Eye on the new buzz about Buzz, the Bum Buzzard. Did he fly in a rocket or fly up a socket?
Hello, Tamara Beckwith here. At last with some good science. This is a light-saving brick. Inside the brick there are millions of tiny boxes mirrored on the inside. During the day, light goes into each tiny mirror box and is trapped, where it remains bouncing around inside. When it goes dark, a good example of this is night, turning this knob removes the tops of the boxes and the light leaps out. The light-saving brick. It saves light.
What can be done to keep bad science at bay? All too often it's left to the little people. Austin Tasseltine reports.
The little people really don't come much littler than this. They're called Gafafwisp, and they've launched this campaign against the global evil of heavy electricity.
Hello, I'm Richard Bryars. I want to tell you about Gafafwisp and heavy electricity. Gafafwisp is the global consortium for a first-world initiative on scientific practice. Self-explanatory, really. Heavy electricity, now that's a bit trickier. It's caused by particle accelerators sending huge jolts of power into domestic power lines. These knock the electricity back into its wild state, which is much heavier due to flattened electrons. The devastating result is that huge masses of heavy electricity start randomly falling out of wires and crashing onto anything below. This gives you some idea. Basically, it's like being hit by a ton of invisible lead soup. In the Sri Lankan village of Upaveli, inhabitants are suffering heavy electricity attacks even as I speak. Can we stand around and eat pies while they're being flattened like flies, swatted by the tail of a mad, invisible horse? Of course not. You, me, and Gafafwisp must contact the Sri Lankan embassy now and let them know just how shoddy this all is. If you're in any doubt, just shut your eyes and imagine a child you know being hit on the head by a ton of invisible lead soup.
What's invisible lead soup?
Non-scientific contributors were sure to check all the facts.
Wobbly matter, is that what they call it?
Before ramming home the dreadful urgency.
Heavy electricity is regularly flattening cattle in Sri Lanka. Afterwards, the poor beasts look like giant fur-covered slugs thrashing about on their backs and made of what scientists call wobbly matter. I won't go into it here, but basically it's caused by sodomized electrons which rush to the cow's head end. Now, just apply that to a young girl human. Well, it's an appalling thought, isn't it? Geeta is 15 years old, and now because of heavy electricity, she's only 8 inches tall. Now, just imagine that. She can't speak, but she must feel quite dreadful. 15 years old, and only, what, this tall.
Sometimes pure physical aggression was the only way.
Let me show you what's going on. Here is Upaveli. Villages and animals, many small children. Think how soft they are. No exoskeleton, no horny old skin like the village elders. And here is the particle accelerator, firing out huge irresponsible jolts of power. The heavy electricity can wreak its ghastly havoc at any minute. Raining down tons of invisible lead soup, but lead soup that can bounce destructively around like a hellish Powerball. So, more accurately, it's a cross between a ton of lead soup and a Powerball, smashing animals, for example. Smashing people. That could be your mother. All because these bloody idiots aren't doing their job properly. So what's to be done? Write to the Sri Lankan embassy, expressing your acute displeasure, Ask them how they'd feel having their brain mashed by invisible lead soup. All you have to do is just take a pen and sign it. Yours sincerely, Stephen Burkoff.